Am I the asshole for carrying on with my knitting even though my husband thinks it's a grandma hobby? Okay, well, pretty much the title. My husband absolutely hates that I knit. He thinks I'm too young to be doing so already. He always pokes fun at me and hides my knitting needles around the house as a joke. Well, today we got in a bit of a row, when he plainly told me he wishes I had more fun, and exciting hobbies that fit my age, and that it's not very attractive that his 23-year-old wife knits like a grandma, his words not mine. I basically told him to kindly fuck off, and shut myself away in our guest bedroom and have been carrying on with knitting my sweater. He's really disappointed with how I reacted at the moment. I know I shouldn't have cursed at him, and so I feel like a bit of a cunt for that. Am I the asshole for ignoring his request and carrying on with my knitting? No offense, but your husband sounds insufferable. I hope there's other reasons you're with him because unsolicited hobby dissing for goddamned knitting is gross AF. And did I read that right? He hides your needles around the house? What the hell? Not the asshole. Your husband on the other hand.
Not the asshole, and it's always a red flag when a partner tries to control another person's healthy, reasonable hobbies. Lots of people, men and women, knit and crochet, and age has nothing to do with anything. Dude has issues. Why do I have a feeling that there's an age gap here? Not the asshole, by the way. Your husband though, total awe. Take the knitting needles to bed with you. They're very pokey. They might be useful. Not the asshole, and get the fuck out of that relationship now.
Not the asshole. Screw your husband. I have been crocheting for 20 years. Been doing it since I was 10. By the way, my dad was on the football team in HS and all of the players including the QB crocheted or knitted.
Not the asshole. Does he try to control things other than your hobbies? Big warning sign there. Not the asshole. You absolutely should have cursed at him. He hides your things as a joke. Yeah, no. Your husband's an asshole. Does he realize the only reason you haven't reacted more aggressively is because you knit? Keep calm and knit on. Not the asshole. Creative hobbies which lead to actual wearable clothing to show for your time and skill are awesome. I'd love to be able to knit well. Knitting helps to relieve stress and is something you can do almost anywhere, as a passenger in a car, at a hospital waiting room, etc. What hobbies does your husband want you to have? Keep knitting and let your husband pound sand. Not the asshole. You are crafty and enjoy knitting. What is the problem? Here is a list of other knitters. I wonder if he thinks Nicholas Holt, Lord, or Amanda Seyfried are too old? How else does your husband put you down and not support you?
Info: is your husband 10 years older than you?
I wonder what appropriate hobbies are for a 23-year-old woman married to him. I'm willing to bet a piece of grandma candy that everything he would name would either benefit him one way or the other, or would be something he wants to brag about to his 30-plus friends who are married to 30-plus women. Something. Well, my hot and young wife who worships the ground I walk on has actually this really hot sexy hobby something. Not the asshole. He sounds about as life-enriching as foot fungus. Not the asshole. What an asshole. Husbands are supposed to be encouraging, not make you feel bad about what you enjoy. Knit girl. It stopped being a grandma hobby about 10 years ago when hipsters started taking it over. At this point, it's expanded well beyond hipsters and grandmas and could even be considered basic now. But that's beside the point. Your significant other is ta. He's also completely out of touch with current events and pop culture. Not the asshole. You have to already know you are obviously not the asshole. The bigger question is, what are the other ways he disrespects you? Not the asshole. Throw the man away. NGL, I cursed at him just reading this. Not the asshole. Enjoy yourself.
No. He is pretty clearly the asshole here. He can go sit and spin on a knitting needle, to be honest. Knitting is an excellent hobby, no matter your age. Not the asshole, and you keep on.
NTA, hobbies have no age requirements, do what you enjoy. It also is not your job to be attractive to your significant other at all times. That is some bullshit misogyny right there. Your significant other is the asshole here. Not the asshole. Plenty of people of all ages knit. Why would this hobby bother him at all? What does he mean it's not attractive? 100% not the asshole. Oh God, that's just so shallow. So shallow. He wants you, a person he allegedly loves, to stop doing something you enjoy because he thinks it's uncool. Not that it's immoral, or that it's too expensive, or that it takes over all your time, but because it isn't cool enough for him. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. You didn't curse him out enough. Why do many men insist on destroying the simplest joys the women in their lives enjoy? Joys that literally have no affect on them but simply something that brings a woman joy. To the tune of Cell Block Tango. Bob always hated the way I knitted for some reason. Knit 1, purl 2. One day my knitting needles had disappeared. Knit 1, purl 2. After finding them in the bottom of the trash, I confronted Bob. He said I was too young to knit. That knitting was an old lady hobby. That's when Bob fell on my knitting needles. Bob fell on my knitting needles 10 times. He had it coming. He had it coming. He only had himself to blame. If you had been there, if you had heard it, betcha you would have done the same.
NRA. Your husband needs his own hobby.
Not the asshole. You are allowed whatever hobbies you like. If your husband wants a flashy and exciting hobby, he can go get it himself. Not the asshole. Throw the whole dude in the trash. Not the asshole. Your husband needs a major attitude adjustment. It's actually a really useful hobby, as well as being creative and therapeutic, and he should be more supportive of it. I'm 24 and I crochet a lot. My boyfriend loves it, thinks it's really cool, and loves the blanket I'm making for him, and that's the way your husband should be with you. I am a grandma, but I've knitted and crocheted since I was 5 or 6. I taught my first husband to knit before we were married. He was 18 at the time. So what if knitting isn't cool? You know what's less cool? Thinking your wife is some sort of accessory to show off. Being so shallow and superficial that you think your wife's love for her own hobby is irrelevant because it's not something he can brag about. Tell him you are so much more ashamed and disgusted with him than he could ever be of you knitting. Not the asshole. You're creating something, that's great. Your husband sounds the one who doesn't behave like his age, whatever it is. He shouldn't be ashamed of your hobby, and hiding your stuff is very immature. Besides, knitting is trendy nowadays. NTAWTF, why do your hobbies feed into his self-image? Also, grannies don't start knitting when they're old. They started when they were young, that's why they're good at it. Knitting is an excellent hobby that helps with mental acuity, concentration, hand-eye coordination, and fine motor skills. Plus, you get cool handmade stuff out of it. I would hazard a guess that this isn't the only thing he tries to control and change about you by insulting you, sabotaging your happiness, and hiding your property.
Not the asshole at all. Why is your husband disparaging your happiness? And hiding your knitting needles? What an immature asshole. This is schoolyard bullying tactics that he is using on his adult wife. Your response was spot on. Not the asshole. I've been a knitter since I was very young and it annoys me to no end when people equate knitting to being a grandma. Knitting is a creative art form. Your boyfriend is narrow-minded in his belief that it's a hobby exclusively for the elderly. Info. How old are you both? 'Cause this reads like an older man wanting the young hot wife, who has young hot hobbies, and the knitting is ruining his fantasy. Not the asshole. He doesn't get to dictate your hobbies. They're your hobbies. You don't just exist to be attractive to him. You were right to tell him to fuck off. What does he even think a sexy hobby is? Info. Does he think that all elderly knitters picked up their hobby late in life? In his opinion, at what age is it appropriate to begin to learn knitting? Is he shocked at the ability of elderly knitters to learn advanced knitting skills so quickly since they obviously all started at an older age instead of, I don't know, learning it over a lifetime of practice? You are not the asshole and your hubby most definitely is an awe. Hiding your hobby gear is not a joke, it's a dick move and he's a sexist idiot. Start showing him pics of men who knit and tell him that men used to run a knitting guild back in the medieval era because it paid well to make all types of clothing. Not the asshole. Everyone has their own hobby, very few are age-specific. Does your husband play video games? Tell him you only thought teenagers did that. It's not true, but it may get the point across. Not the asshole. He's being super judgy. I'm 27 and while fiancé sometimes teases me for how much I spend on yarn, he has managed to learn enough to actually talk to me about my knitting patterns because, like a proper partner, he supports me enjoying myself. Why even post this? Not the asshole. Wow, your husband sounds like a judgmental dick. I know this perfectly harmless hobby of yours makes you happy but I think it's unattractive. Stop, K. No. Just no. Not the asshole. Your husband sounds exhausting. This is also just entirely shitty and, frankly, odd behavior. Don't tolerate this. Your hubby hid your knitting needles and he is disappointed you simply told him to kindly fuck off. Face with rolling eyes, face with rolling eyes, face with rolling eyes. That is probably one of the nicest things you could have said in response to his sexist needling. Sorry, could not resist. Not the asshole, and please don't even think of making him anything until he grovels.
Not the asshole. Excuse me. He doesn't like your hobby because it's not attractive to him? What the actual fuck? Your hobby is for you to enjoy, not for you to be sexy for him. That is bizarre. Also, the whole fire department here knits because it's hard for them to find good socks, and I don't think they would love him calling it a grandma hobby. It takes a lot of skill to be able to knit. I have taught men and women and non-binary people of all ages to knit. It's also really good for your brain because it makes you cross hemispheres, plus it's practical. So many wins. Tell him to shove it, and if he doesn't, then stick a chia goo extra sharp DPN up his nose.
My ex hated that I made my own clothes, cooked food how I preferred it, and had hobbies outside of his realm of expertise. Welp, he's an ex, isn't he?
Not the asshole. Keep knitting. Clearly he has no idea how trendy knitting and any crafting is ATM. But I'm also thinking that the knitting might not be the actual issue here though. Why would he want you to stop something that brings you joy? Is it either because he's jealous of your attention or just wants to control your time? Can I ask you something? Seriously? Why are you married to someone like this? My partner is never anything but enthusiastic, sweet, and supportive about something I'm interested in. That's what you deserve. Also, you're pretty young to be married, and I hope you get the chance to explore more of life, and yourself, autonomously. What is with the men in the sub having problems with something that doesn't concern them at all? Not the asshole. You knit your sweater and be happy. Not the asshole. Also, if you're looking for someone to give a sweater, I have a 40 inches chest and 36 inches sleeves, and I look best in earth tones. Seriously, though, knitting is a great hobby, fun, stress-reducing, and you end up with something practical at the end. Your husband needs to figure out why he's so threatened by this, and then he needs to grow up. Not the asshole. My girlfriend knits. She enjoys it, and that's all that matters. Not the asshole. Your husband is an idiot. Home knitted things rule. Not the asshole. I started knitting in high school, and in college my cute knitted hat brought all the boys to the yard. Your husband is being an ignorant, judgmental asshole. Edit, words.